And we are back here still on the second day for PNSQC 2022. And I managed to get here on the spot here with me our next victim interviewee. He was saying that was going to tell you all the nuclear codes, but let's hear about that.
Okay.
We have with us our friend Jason Arbon. Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you, this is fun. I love it, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I mean, world famous Senor Jason Arbon.
Just nerd famous.
Yeah.
Which is like twice a year for 2-block radius.
No, that's more than enough, and it's more than the average, I would say.
Average tester, yeah.
Yeah. So, amigo, for the few ones that do not know you, because yeah, I don't overestimate it, author of How Google Tests Software, co-author,
yep.
And many, many more things, but I don't want to get ahead. Amigo Jason, why don't you tell the audience about you, what do you do, and what's the deal with you in general?
I'm just a tester. Like I fell in love with testing accidentally, not even accidentally, in college before I started working professionally. I was working on a project, and it was dangerous and involved like missiles and satellites. And everyone was like, cool, I think it works. And I was like, I want to make sure it works. That's how I knew I was a tester, because I was worried if it failed. Nobody else seemed to care. Those were developers, and I was a tester. So I worked at Microsoft for a long time, a bunch of different projects, including like being WinFS, Forever May It Rest, and a bunch of projects there. And then I don't talk about it much. I actually quit and created my own search company. That's quietly in the history, just does kind of history. Then I worked at Google. I was the test manager, or whatever you call it, for automation on the Chrome browser. The funnest, and a couple other projects like Google Desktop. The most fun one was actually the Chrome OS laptops everybody uses, the kids use today. Like the kids, I mean actual children.
Yeah.
I'm like old people say, oh, the children, the kids these days. But that was fun. I was in charge. I had like 7 months to put together an entire test plan from scratch on Chrome OS before they launched. That was pretty wild. And after that I worked at UTest for a while. So I was like running some of product and engineering at UTest or Applause today. It was fun. I test tons of apps. And you're like, okay, hurry it up, Jason. And then I started Test.ai, where the goal is kind of test all the world's apps, and use AI and machine learning to make testing more repeatable, reusable, so we can finally scale testing out. And I have NDAs. I can't talk about what's going on with Test.ai right now. But let's just say I also am working on some new stuff, because I'm now, my mentality has evolved from building tools with AI in them to just doing the work. Like, why give the tool to a guy or a gal to go hammer the rock to get the gold when you can just mine the gold with a giant machine? It's talking about testing today. Kelly doesn't talk today.
No, it's a big difference, and so many topics that you are touching on with. I'm being told. Mind you moving the microphone? I think it's
sure. Yep.
A little bit too much in the way, and we are slapping it and being happy.
Is that better? Do we know it's better? Or we'll hear?
We will know if the people watching.
Chris could talk with us.
No, and it's great because the collaborations, how you started with Google. I mean, personally, I come to know about you from the book, like as a starting tester and like the gods of the internet, how do they do things, and the title is very appropriate.
So that's why I wrote it, because I was at Microsoft and these Google guys were kicking our butt, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, how do they test? And I looked into it, kind of word of mouth. We found out they had an order of magnitude, actually lower than that, fewer testers for developers. And I'm like, how do they, this doesn't make sense.
How they manage.
Yeah. And then, so I went over there and I realized what's kind of going on. I got around and so I just wanted to share, because I always wondered from the outside. So really the goal of me working on the book at all was to help just get people to peek inside, like that it's just as messy as everywhere else, but they also have enough money that there's some interesting experiments going on and the like of that. So That's good. I'm glad because that was the whole goal, was to just share for anyone else with curiosity.
No, and
But then I realized how they actually did all the testing. You know how they did it?
how?
Microsoft did this crazy thing, and they built software for people to use. Google had a couple file servers and a, I don't know, 800 kilobyte web page. They didn't need all the testers. Sorry, that was a bad joke. But like, it was just like Google was just this like little front end UI web page at the time, right? There wasn't a lot of testing to be done in a weird way.
I mean, the starting point and for Google, like search and the initial page, and that's straightforward.
Yeah,
I mean,
so what's interesting is like, there's another thing I figured out. Like, so the highest paid, most respected testers at Google, they didn't call them testers.
Yeah.
They called them search quality engineers.
search quality
Yeah,
engineers.
you know what they were?
Cool.
Glorified testers with PhDs. And they did, like, the most important thing at Google was actually testing. Because anybody can build a search engine. The question is, how do you know it's better? Right? And that's a hard problem because you don't have an oracle. So how do you test something without the oracle? It's an incredibly difficult, interesting problem.
Huh.
So it's almost all engineers, or best engineers were doing testing work. Because it's all about quality. Like, the blue link can show up and you can click it, but the problem is actually quality and testing that engine in each iteration. So the core engineers there are just some of the best testers on the planet, but they don't call them testers.
Because, and you make a very good point, because glorified testers or engineers, and that's where the lines start to get blurry. And I think it's a very interesting point that the book comes from, with the software SDETs, software testers.
Software engineering test.
Like the lines started to become really blurry into which one was or doing those definitions. And I think the big thing that was outstanding for me when reading the book was, you gotta become almost a full-blown engineer to be the best tester in this type of environments.
Yep, I agree. I was talking with some folks in the hallway this morning, and it's anonymous because there's two people on that topic, but I was talking to them and they were talking about test selection, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm going, cool, like that's a cool for a lot of people and stuff, but like, what about the data, right? And it's because testing's not just make sure that when you click a button, the event handler happens and a function gets called and a file gets written to disk. It's, does that code execute against data, and data you've never seen, data that will come in tomorrow, right? A new sign up. And so it's like code coverage and test selection, I think test selection only based on code, still missing a huge part of the problem. But we were also discussing that it's a hard problem. So it's not that it's expected to be solved, but you've got to be a full stack. You've got to think about not just the user experience and the code, but also the data and the business to be a great tester, like you're saying.
It's really interesting because you just went ahead into it. It's holistic. QA is not only about manual, only about automations, only. And I think with this modernity, modern times, futuristic, whatever you want to call it, we are being requested to be more like that. To be, I was joking yesterday, Renaissance people, like we know multiple traits, the business that you're saying, what should be tested.
You're a painter and a sculptor and a writer and
anatomist and
yeah.
all that stuff. And what did you transition into? Because that's another big question. What are you into right now? I'm sorry.
I haven't talked about my transition publicly yet. Which transition?
Am I getting into something I don't know?
Personal.
No. You were a tester in Google.
Yeah.
And
the lowest level tester at Google, by the way, too.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to interview. They just paid me the crap. Not the crap, but all right, here's a job. Because I wasn't going to interview to get, that's another story.
Okay. Very.
You want to hear it?
Yeah. I mean, this is your stage to share those questions.
Maybe, I don't know, funny story. So I interviewed, when I worked at Bing, I was straight and true to the cause and wearing the team stripes, and I just focused on making Bing better, right? Little did I know, every other person had interviewed at Google. I found that from a friend that worked at Google. So that was kind of fun. But even like the management and everything. But so now after I found out everybody else had interviewed, I thought, well, it's not breaking any trust if all the directors and managers and my boss and everyone has all interviewed over there. So I thought I just wanted to hear what the interview process was because it was rumored to be very tough and rigorous and stuff. So I went over there with kind of a casual attitude. I was going to stay at Bing. I just want to see what the interview process was like. So I went over there because recruiters were bugging me, and I ignored them.
Huh.
Okay, I'll go over and test it out. So I went over there just for fun, and I interviewed, and because my role at Google was a non-coding tester, officially on paper, or sorry, at Bing, I was a test manager or something like that. I wasn't a programming engineer. So they gave me like an STE track or tester track of interviews. And at the end, they figured I could kind of code, not very well, but program a little bit. They go, oh, we want to do some more interviews. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. I've already seen the interview process, and that was fun, whatever. But I had no intention of working there. So for about 18 months or something, I had an outstanding offer from Google. I told them, no, I'm not going to come back and do more interviews on coding. So anyway, I had a standing offer for Google for like 18 months or something. So only when my other thing dropped, I fell back in the Google role. But I didn't want to interview. I didn't care about all these titles because I thought that to be a really good engineer, tester. They were a mix of all of them. And I didn't want to be pigeonholed. So I just said, like, whatever, I'll start working and then I'll figure it out. And you know what happened? Like 2 weeks later, I was talking with the head of search, literally the head of search, and I got permission to build a search team out for personalized web search.
Whoa.
And I'm like the lowest level on the stack. Actually, one other fun one. So James Whitaker was always mad at me.
Okay.
Because I was managing like multiple teams, one in search, one in Chrome. This is maybe a little bit too TMI, but I was managing multiple teams. And I'm managing people that are like a level or two higher than me. Just that's the way it was, because I was the lowest level rung, and I didn't care. And so, but it was trouble for him because when he tried to get me money during review time to reward me for doing all this work, my base pay was way down here. So we had to get all these different exceptions to get me enough cash to keep me happy, basically. And it was frustrating for him. So he kept telling me, go in, like you got to put yourself up for promotion, right? And again, in testing, like it's linear, like you were saying earlier, like it's exactly what you're saying. They try to, you're a coding tester, or you're a manual tester, or you're a, accessibility person, or whatever. I thought, no, you're a hybrid of all of them.
Stop trying to put me in a box.
Don't box me in, right? In a very big box. But so I kind of said, I don't say screw, but forget that for a while. So finally I gave in to Whitaker, and I'm like, this is just stupid. So I'm managing multiple teams, literally with search engine, Chrome, another one, and I put myself in promotion. I got turned down for a promotion, just the next level.
What?
And you know what the first was? I probably would have been failed for other reasons, but the first reason was the requirement to be considered for promotion, the first screening in the spreadsheet, was how many check-ins you'd had that quarter. And I'd had 60.
What?
And you had to have at least 80 check-ins to be considered. I'm just like, whatever. So I never even got promoted at Google officially. But Whitaker funneled a lot of cash to me.
I mean, as long that's a very important part. It's funny when you say it, because to many people that we've known or worked with, it's really important, this title. I want to be this whatever Pokemon level 3 evolution, something blah.
Yeah.
We know it doesn't matter, and now that I started with the Pokemon analogy, like you can be a top tier Pokemon, but you may be the lowest, have the weapon accurate for a higher task. You may be defeating the big one, and I don't think we should strive that much for those labels. I like a lot your story from where you're coming, and all that brought lots of good things. You managed to collaborate with all these teams, with James, and to be out there, like bringing all those differences. And I think it's something that you tell for the audience, like go and strive in other areas, go and work in other type of things, and let yourself be boxed. And I don't know if this is like a good teaching, but don't worry that much about your label in your presentation card or.
Yeah, don't worry about it at all. In fact, also when I landed, they let you do this thing at Google where you could, on your business card, and in the internal tool, you could type in whatever title it was you wanted. And I think it was because they just hadn't bothered yet to systemize it. It was pretty early.
Huh.
And so I put in, what did I put in?
I'm very curious about this one.
Oh, I typed in, that's right, I forgot this. I typed in social engineer. Because I felt like that's what I was actually doing was not like social media or something like that, but like
people.
bringing people together and ideas and funding them and then making sure that they execute and add value. So really kind of management, even at a technical level, a lot of it's, when you work in a corporation or a team, it's all social.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny, social engineering. But, so that was my business card when I traveled around. I was a social engineer. But I think you're right, and you shouldn't get stuck on that stovepipe, because you look around you, the most interesting people that have the most value are cross-trained, even in like science, right? It's the guy that knows, the lady that knows biology and she's cross-trains or works with a guy in computer science or works with somebody in philosophy, and that's where the breakthroughs happen, I think.
Yeah.
And that's when you really get recognized. As a tester, it's only like you get recognized if you find a bad bug, but even then it's like, I call it like it's that show like What Not to Wear, where people come into your house and they go, that's a horrible outfit and stuff. Like you're that person, like you go, thank you, I'm not gonna wear that outfit again, but it doesn't make you feel good.
You're outstanding.
Right, and
You're
the engineers
different.
are the ones that get you the wardrobe, right? So they're always kind of favored.
Changing and
socially.
keeping the wardrobe analogy, like the wardrobe keeps changing and evolving, and we need to kind
You're good.
of be
You're good.
on that
Exactly.
track. And you the latest trend in Europe or whatever in Google, whatever are things being generated, and those type of switch, I think it's crucial, and on your end helped a lot. You had that perspective. You didn't care about it. And when I was mentioning the transition out of Google right now, that where you are right now and what you started, mind sharing where that's switching, because you had these multiple hats where you were. I'm like, I'm taking them all off and I'm turning into your new endeavor. Well, not so new anymore.
Yeah. The most fun thing about leaving Google is that, so I was always fighting for resources, especially in testing. I was fighting for resources to experiment, the permission to experiment, or, it's difficult. And even if, it's almost worse if you're an engineer, because you have an infinite feature list, right? Testers can, part of my life has been actually, if you're doing exploratory testing, nobody knows how much time you did it, because it's just the bug output. Nobody knows, right? So you can do a lot of. I would often leave the Starbucks nearby the Google campus and experiment or think about testing with a couple people, have fireside chats or whatever with some people about testing. But leaving was fun because, again, like, I don't think I've ever talked about this publicly, but yeah, I was like the lowest level engineer at Google, and but I didn't have a chip on my shoulder about it at all. I thought it was kind of funny, and then I got away with doing all this other stuff because I didn't have the other responsibilities attached to me. So there's value in being the lowest level engineer, because guess what? Expectations are low, and if you get a team, guess what you get?
That's
a lot more accountability and work for like 10-15% more salary, of which half is gobbled up by more taxes.
ironic that
Why is that a good thing?
being the lowest level, you didn't have the high management pressure or on yourself or on your numbers. Double-edged sword, but gave you the possibility and opportunity, sounds to me, pun intended, to try moonshots and try to
absolutely.
do these different things that you could.
The personal search stuff was, which I haven't talked about much either. Bringing this interesting stuff.
I need to bring
Very
you more
relevant.
to these interviews. I'm noticing.
But that was something I went to other engineers there, and they're like, well, "That's done." By the way, the last guy that did that doesn't work here anymore because it was just a bad idea. But that made it more interesting for me, right? And also, if people think it's a bad idea, that means you could make this much progress, and you're a hero, But back to leaving like Google, the most fun thing was I got paid an intern wage or whatever. But when I left and I created Test AI or Aptif originally, it was so rewarding. I told the Google folks this is that, so I'm working at Google, kind of struggling, trying to fight to get room to innovate and play. And then finally I just quit. And I realized this weird thing is that later on Google invested in us, in my company. So ironically, I left a low-level engineer, and then they give me tens of millions of dollars to do the experiments that I was trying to cheat on. Not cheat, but like find hours here or there, take a longer lunch and try to and build a team out and really explore what I thought was kind of the future of testing. So then basically they're working for me in a weird way, right? And then and completely funding me. So So it was a very interesting transition and power change. So it's, again, I think, back to what you're saying, it's wear multiple hats, but just focus on what you want to do. If you want to be a cog, that's fine. Punch the clock and stuff. But if you want to like experiment or kind of do moonshots or something like that, it's actually incredibly easy to do. We just have all these mental blockers on our mind that stop us from doing it inside the corporation, or just leave. And if it's an interesting idea, you can get funding for it, and you have total freedom.
No, it's a great story, or to know your experience. I didn't know that you had.
I didn't get tens of millions of dollars, by the way. I burned tens of millions of dollars of Google money. Somehow more exciting, actually.
Which no, and it's an element that I think we all in QA struggle to get budgets, permissions, time, and all the things that we. Because as you were very well said, like this balance, new features like QA, and it's really tough to justify or to give back to management, the higher levels, for like, hey, I stopped all these things that you never saw happening. It's because of me. Wait, I never saw them, and that generates a big.
So Whitaker has this little book on career development. I don't mean to over push him. I love him to death.
He's an awesome guy.
He doesn't need his own. He doesn't need extra marketing. But he wrote this whole book on how to get your career going or whatever. And you see, he moved around a lot, right? And he kind of influenced me to think that, you can be pretty mobile, not just within Microsoft or within Google, but you can jump companies and learn a lot. But the big takeaway was he said something about like, and it sounded initially to me very selfish or self-centered or not doing the right thing for the company at first glance, which is don't do what your boss tells you to do, essentially. That's one of my takeaways. And I found I was doing that with him all the time. I'm sneaking around Whitaker all the time, right? I'm talking with the search guy, and then I say, hey, yeah, I got another team, by the way. And he goes, what? Where did this come from? But it's because you take the risk, right? And don't just rely on the management channel to take care of you. Because the company's goal and your manager's goal is to keep you in that role and productive. That's their goal. And it's not to promote you. And the manager's goal oftentimes is obviously take credit for what you've done. So why try to seek acceptance or reward from the channel that's actually working against you? So he articulates obviously far better. But yeah, like just do what you want to do. And if you're doing what your boss asks you to do, you're probably going to be in that job for a while. If you're really good at it, you actually get stuck.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword because you very well say, and it depends on anyone's desires, careers.
I know everybody in the testing industry quits tomorrow, and they're like, Jason said it was okay.
No, and there are many watching like, no, my job security is the biggest importance. I want to be the cog, and I don't care. Respectable. I mean, we're not.
Can I inject one other thing?
Go.
Not that I'm accomplished yet. I'm still coding it in the middle of the night.
We all are.
Yeah. And, but it was actually something my dad said, I won't break down, I won't cry. No. But my dad told me this one dangerous thing. Parents hated, I quit Microsoft, quit Google, they hated it. They're like, oh great, my child's a nut or a failure. They assumed I think they assumed I got fired and stuff. Especially when I got kids. But my dad told me, this is the one thing I wanted to make sure actually people in the testing space realize. Job security, as my dad said, job security is the ability in this modern world, is the ability to get the next job. It's not to keep your current job. A lot of times, you don't even own whether you keep your current job. Layoffs, especially right now and stuff, you don't own that. But what you do own is the ability to get that next job, and that's actually true job security. So rather than try to dot every I and cross every T in your current role, nobody else really cares about that. It's how are you improving yourself and your skill sets and contribution to the business and articulation of your value. So just getting the next job is really the job security I think today.
I mean, it's something that you're just like breaking my parameters because you're right. How marketable you are, how good can you fit on the next gig or even the next gig, maybe inside of your organization where you're working at the moment, but that truly gives you job security. How new skills do you have? How well can you use them? How much are they needed?
And I had this worry and angst all the time, especially when I had kids. And I've got like a full-time job, and I'm like, apparently I'm responsible for these animals. Like, how can you quit your job, right? A secure job, but it's almost always been, in most experience talking to other people, it's almost always been for the better. And the more you hop, I'm not saying you should hop all the time, but the more you transition, the more used to transitioning you are. So it becomes even more secure, ironically. I think people that move around more are actually more job secure than the people that just clock in every day and pray they don't get laid off or let go or, you know, whatever. So, or acquired and then they do cost cutting or something.
No, you're touching a statistic that study after study is being shown. If you want to improve your income, you need to be hopping from jobs, from positions, because in the same one, if you stay there, it doesn't happen automatically that much. I mean, we all know stories of exceptions, but the most common is like you go to a new, and you don't grow only income-wise, but you get to a new gig and you get to learn new stuff. Every time, at least in my experience, I arrive at a new place, like, oh, this new thing, and you start growing, you start learning.
Yeah.
That's super important.
And even today, also people I know, like, they sometimes optimize for money.
Huh?
Right? But guess what? Everyone that optimizes for money, I got 5 offers, they optimize for the salary, they pay it back. They have to earn that money, and then they kind of get stuck. So it's also making sure that when you land your next job, it's thinking about the next job after that. Just make sure you have the room to learn, explore, self-improve, go to conferences, pay Phil money to come to the PNSQC. But make sure you have that learning opportunity, because especially in technology, it's always changing. You've got to be moving to be relevant.
This is a big blast of mind-blowing details. I mean, unexpected for me, Jason. You're a source of good recommendations, good experiences, and time has flown by. We're close, and I don't want to hold you too long as well. I know that you have multiple responsibilities on this conference, but I don't want to miss the opportunity also of the people who may want to learn more about Test AI, that may want to know why they should care. I think it's really important, and like a free ad if you want to. Not that it's that much needed, but it's important for people, I think.
Sure, yeah, and kind of a reason I created the company was to investigate and share the information. So Test AI, like, again, I'm kind of personally just transitioning from that tool-based thing to just doing the work, which is a longer story. Kind of my presentation today was on that topic. So rather than build tools so people can build bots, I'm just interested in building the bots, kind of go straight to building the bots, kind of bypass that tooling aspect. But yeah, so like I said, I can't talk, got some NDAs about what Test AI is doing right now. And also most of our customer base was like, and is like with, Google, Microsoft, the big, multiplayer game kind of companies. Really hard testing problems. So that's what we focused on, really.
Yeah, but for the people that do not know, you don't share the secret recipe. But what's your sales pitch with Test AI?
Oh, better, faster, cheaper.
Oh, man, well, okay. That's it, everyone. Thank you. Good night.
But actually, it's interesting. It's a whole. We're short on time. I try to steer away from the marketing completely because most marketing in the testing space is marketing.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not a marketer, so I like to just talk through code usually and just have running code. That's also why our customer base is primarily people like Microsoft, Google, not the average, engineer trying to automate a single application today. So the ad would be just the next phase of that is working on building bots. So one-liner is, I'm taking Tariq, who's on the board of the conference.
Yep.
He gives lots of online classes about API testing, microservices and stuff. What I'm trying to do is take all these testing experts, convert them to code, basically, and then you can run them on your app. So rather than learn from Tariq and sit through 2 hours of Tariq, being Tariq, you can just take his bot and run it local against your application and get the value that Tariq would have if he was testing your app. So that's what I'm focusing on. That's what I mean by passing the tool, but directly called it digitizing testers today. So I've talked with a handful of folks that people would recognize, getting their expertise and encoding it into a bot, and then just letting that bot, you point it to the URL and it does its thing.
That's awesome because you will get your own Tariq AI.
then you get to manage them, talk about career promotion. Like you have your own little Tariq bot, like a Tamagotchi.
I want to race, boss.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. That's amazing because I wasn't aware of these moves towards that you were doing. Because last I saw you, I was telling you earlier today at TISQA, the Triangle Software and Rally, and you were presenting your the functionalities that you had at the moment of forms, like recognition, visual understanding, what were the elements of the forms. But this that you're describing now is a leap, like magnitude of difference of what you're.
Yeah, so that's why people are like, oh, testing is cool and all stuff, but like, why would you be doing something different? Because I realized that that's just an enabling layer. Because fundamentally, when you build tests with AI and ML, the cool thing is that it can be reused. That's the cool thing about AI versions of test infrastructure. Is it can test one retail box or one search box, retail app or a search box. It can be reused across other ones that are similar. Mm-hmm. That's the power of kind of AI and ML. But what I was doing or have been doing, read into some past tense, is building a tool and I had to sell it to somebody so that they can use it on one app. And my whole goal founding the company was to test the world's apps. Mm-hmm. So I'm going, okay, there's more apps created every day than I can close the deal with.
Than people, than testers, and...
Yeah. And people are slow and they're emotional. You have to social engineer them.
And we went races and different positions and switch and all that.
Yeah, and they got their own career goals. The virtual Tariq, whenever you want him to run, you just click a button and he runs. He's at your whim.
That's super interesting. You just get me thinking. I don't know if I'm getting into the sci-fi world or it's too much, but while we were talking, the Jason that we had at Google, we could code and generate an AI version of yourself, Jason, let's say 2, 3, or maybe 4.0. But now what we have of you today, as you have evolved and on different tracks, we can have Jason 7.0. Yes. That is good at test AI, but this other was good at forms, or this one was good at search.
And how much better, so you read the book and you gained some context from it, right? Uh-huh. How much better, because I'm not going to live till I'm 100 years old, probably, and I might get hit by a bus or 2 buses, and then I'm just gone. Tariq's gone, that wisdom, that experience is gone. We need, I think, focus on encoding it into machines, so that those machines, so Tariq could be testing apps for the next 100 years or something, right? Or until AI takes over, whatever. But like, it's so crazy that we have waves of testers every year learning, how do I test a sign-in dialogue again from scratch? How do I test a search box? What is an API? How do I permute API calls to build valid test cases? Tariq is just sitting over there.
Yeah, we keep pointing because he's over there.
The real one.
He'll be soon.
We'll never need to see him again in person. But he knows how to do that. So why... And there's more testing than we can get done today. So why not let Tariq test almost all these apps, like tens of thousands of apps, the way he would suggest you do it directly. And then you can learn from that or build on the business-specific things or whatever. But let the virtual Tariq, do all of the basic stuff for you. And because he's one of the best testing microservices. It's crazy that we have this. I think it's accelerating knowledge transfer. And it's also like today in AI and ML, it's moving fast. It gets dated. But you can type in text and it generates an image. Last week, now it can generate a little video, right? Guess what? It could probably generate a test case that
next month I will be out of a job and I won't be able to do this interview because I just can't script it and the AI will...
No, but it still is a collaboration. Right? You type the text and you say, this is what I want, right? And you let the bot do the basic stuff. And then people tweak it and they iterate on it, but why relearn all that basic stuff? Just let the Tariq bot do it, for example.
It's crazy because every time that I look around and check what's AI up to, what are you working on, you're already borderline in sci-fi, like digitalization of the personas, the testers. I mean, what you're saying, you are living...
It's a little whack. It feels like when I first talked about AI for testing, people are like, what are you talking about, homie? Right? Like, that's weird, and I don't understand it. And now, like, there's 4 or 5 sessions on AI and testing and stuff. So it feels like that moment again is happening, which is, I'm whack-a-noodle, the room was only half full or less, but that's why I come to conferences, you'll see what's coming. I think this is the obvious direction of where things are going. So I'm back to the whole thing, like, what am I doing this? I'm just putting myself in that role, because that's where I think it's the most fun is. And frankly, also maybe the most business opportunity, but that's where things are going. And don't believe me, just look, like you're saying, look around. Like, machine learning is getting crazy, and we still talk about hard coding test cases in Java, like with Selenium. I just offended 2/3 of the audience.
No, I know, and I tend to do that at times, because it's not only about coding, it's not only about automating, record and replay, all those things that starts up with job security. We get into the field, but that's the line where we were talking earlier, like towards improvement, towards where the industry is moving, towards what we should be learning now. You're scaring me a little bit that I should be
so people bring this up.
Learning into.
Complete opposite though. So of almost everyone I've talked to, even at the conference or last week, I have there's a bot that from a performance testing engineer expert, right? And it can measure the performance of your homepage, the conference's webpage and other testing companies' web pages. If you go to any of those companies though, they don't know the performance of their own homepage. So my point is, like, even apps that are tested are not very fully tested. So this basically the idea is to give a baseline of testing to every app and if testers care about it, make them look smart, right, and not get caught off guard. But really, if you think of what I'm hacking on is, most apps are not even tested. We're the 1% testers.
Yeah.
So there's so many apps that are in web pages that don't have a testing, don't have the luxury of one. I want to make sure that all the software in the world gets some basic level of testing coverage. And so it's trying to democratize that by letting everybody have a miniature Tamagotchi version of Tariq, so their APIs get at least basically tested.
I really look forward to having my Tariq AI to help me, like Tariq APIs.
Calls too, right? Just,
that would be awesome.
There's a merch store. You can get a little Tariq doll.
That dog's more into sci-fi. Put Tariq AI in the doll, make it move a little bit, maybe creep it.
Old Barney doll.
But wow, amigo, you have blown my mind. It's really interesting. Everyone looking at or listening at what Jason is bringing. It's borderline scary, exciting, and mind-blowing. I'm so amazed and impressed of what is coming. That beware, be prepared, and look forward. Switch careers. We have learned so much today. Amigo Jason, where can people find more about you and reach out if they have questions?
Just probably LinkedIn, just Jason Arbon on LinkedIn, and then Twitter at Jarbon, Jarbon.
There you have it.
Big on the social media with the kids.
There you have it. Reach out, take a note, look at test.ai. It's really important as well.
And if you want to beta test this stuff, I'm by myself working on this kind of right now. Like, I'd love some beta testers that can think about how to test apps that test apps that test apps. And also, if you're a testing expert and interested in being digitized at some point, I'd love to reach out, chat, and there can be multiple performance experts that have their own different areas of expertise. If you want to get digitized, we'll see.
I'm curious. Yeah, that digital mustache and everything. Is that possible?
I'm telling you, like, it looks like an NFT. You can do that. Just add a couple extra pixels right there.
Look forward to it, amigo. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much. Stay tuned. This was Jason Arbon, super awesome tester, person, amigo, and I look forward to it. It's been a blast.
Great.
Thank you so much, amigo.
Right,
okay, cutting off.
See ya.
And take care, everyone. Stopping the stream and getting closer to the stream box.